ZOS are now listening? Hey, it's Dan, and welcome back to Unified Gaming. Now in this one, I want to break down the details for AoE testing in Cyrodiil. This is a post on the forums by Gina herself. Gina is a community manager for ZOS. She generally posts the patch notes, so she kind of gives you what the developers are changing. If you're kind of unaware, ZOS are looking at the lag in Cyrodiil and going, there is issues there. They're not naive of this, and I think it's really, really good that they are kind of beginning to address the issues. What they kind of start though is they actually refer back to the previous post. So for those people who are unaware or who have been living under a rock for the past, 3-4 months, in July, Rich Lambert, creative director of ZeniMax, he basically said, look, we are aware of the performance in Cyrodiil, we are not naive, and they basically went through and explained in this article, quite detailed, the issues, what they think is causing the issues, and how they plan to test them and hopefully fix them. I have made a video on the channel already, and it is titled, Is PvP Dead? Because the changes they proposed, although it sounds very strong and clickbaity, it's not, because I was quite concerned about the way in which they want to adjust combat to fix the lag, which I don't think is the right way of doing it. So, long and the short of it is, they believe AoE abilities in PvP are causing the lag. And most people will probably go, that makes sense. An AoE has to scan, see how many people it hits, apply that effect to those many people for that duration, keep it up, and so on. So it causes server calculations, processes, and the more you use it, the more lag you get. That does make sense. And what we see in PvP when the ball groups are zerging, we see that lag. That's completely fair. The issue I have is what is classified as an AoE skill. And so, long and the short of it is, AoE abilities are anything that basically does an effect in an area that looks for another player, including yourself. And so that could be things like your armor buff, volatile armor, for example, because it shoots spikes out of you and does damage around you, AoE. Breath of life, because when you cast it, it looks for somebody to apply it to, it's AoE. Rapid regen, healing ward, combat prayer, healing springs, puncher in sweeps, deep fissure, ice fortress, hardened ward, because it actually looks for your pet to give it to your pet. So many skills in this game are actually AoE behind the hood. Like if you look underneath the hood, they are technically AoE abilities and have been flagged for this change. So for me, this does cause issues because it's like 200 to 250 abilities are impacted by this sort of changing that they're trying to do. And it does need to happen, yes, but I think the tests are sort of questionable. You can go through and read this article yourself. There will be a link in the description. This is the old one. These tests are in the new one as well, but it's just to kind of give you an idea that ZOS are aware lag is an issue and AoEs could be the cause behind it. As for kind of today, what has been posted recently, well, on September 23rd, Gina has posted this article. I'm going to go through and read it, and as I'm reading it, I'm just going to stop and make comments or things that I think are relevant to kind of the points at hand. So that way you don't have to kind of read it yourself. Alternatively, you don't have to, listen for me read for 3 minutes and then actually see what I think, okay? So, Gina starts with this. Hi everyone. Starting next week, we'll be running a series of tests in Cyrodiil on the live PC mega servers, focusing on area of effect, AoE, abilities, to help identify how we can improve and make more positive impact on PvP performance. To read more about what brought us to determine the need for these tests, we posted a full explanation back in July. Basically what I just said, okay? There is a video, as I've said, that you can check out if you have missed it. Below is a list of the tests we are currently planning on Cyrodiil. This is PC. Just really clear, it's PC, not console. Along with the dates and a short summary of what to expect. Note that each test is independent of each other, and tests are subject to change. We will post this in a thread once each test has started or ended, or if anything changes, and we'll keep it locked from comments so it's easier to follow the current status. Remember that you will earn double AP in Cyrodiil during these tests. So lots of people going, yes, double AP, oh, awesome, awesome, awesome. And my concern is look at the test and then see, is it worth doing PvP in this period for just double AP? Once these tests are complete, we'll spend some time analysing the data and determine next steps, which we'll be sure to share with you. So what I would expect is that they'll do these tests. We won't see any changes next patch, but the patch after. If we see changes next patch, that tells us instantly they've already made the decision and they've actually coded it in right now and have just gone ahead without really listening to feedback. So I'm saying it right now, if they change PvP based on one of these results for the next patch, it's probably that they didn't listen to the players anyway. I hope that's not the case. So what are they suggesting? On the September 8th to 14th, they are going to have a shared global AoE cooldown. It's a 3-second timer. For this test, all AoE abilities will share a cooldown of 3 seconds. This means when you cast an AoE, you will not be able to cast another for 3 seconds. The example they use is really, really unfortunate. It's the Templar, okay? If you cast Ritual of Retribution or the other morph of it, you won't be able to cast Puncturing Sweeps for 3 seconds. Yeah, that's just spammable. You can't cast your spammable for 3 seconds. Yeah, there's some classes you can probably just see instantly are really going to get shafted. And that's not great. And in all honesty, from looking at the list of skills impacted, as I've said earlier, it's armor buffs, heals, shields, utility skills like molten armaments, crit surge, all those kind of things that look for AoE checks. They're going to be impacted, and Magicka generally gets the short end of the stick here. So it's going to be another buff for stamina in all honesty, because Dizzying Swing single target, Executioner single target, Rallies is not an AoE skill. Dawnbreaker, yes, it's an AoE, but it's an ultimate, as is Onslaught. So most stamina specs that use the typical 2H setup are going to have no penalties, whereas Magicka will have all these issues. So that's test 1. A cooldown on AoE skills. As I said, it does apply to armor buffs too. So you cast, volatile armor, you can't use talons anymore. You cast, engulfing flames, you can't use talons anymore. It's going to affect so many classes drastically. It's really, really just poor. As for kind of the second test, September 14th to 21st. That's literally a day before my birthday, by the way. Individual AoE cooldown, 3-second timer. For this test, each AoE ability will have an individual cooldown. This means when you cast an AoE, you will not be able to cast that same skill for 3 seconds. So if you use Puncturing Sweeps, you can't use Puncturing Sweeps again for 3 seconds. Now, just to clarify, this would effectively, this first test has the same same sort of situation in this second test. That if you cast any AoE skill, you can't use another AoE. So if you cast jabs in week 1, you can't cast jabs again for another 3 seconds, and that's the same for week 2. So I want to see many Templars really struggle for these first 2 weeks. That's one issue instantly, that some classes are going to be at a really big disadvantage. As for 21st of September to 28th, there's going to be no cooldown, but there'll be a global ramp in AoE cost. The idea is that in this test, when you use an AoE skill, you get a debuff and it increases the cost of the next AoE cast. It's a bit like how Streak or Dodge Roll works. So this means that if you can't spam AoEs, you're going to end up spending more and more Magicka or stamina, so you can't really sustain the AoE spam. This is a good idea, in principle, but I don't think this is the right idea to have it on just all AoEs. I think it's on specific skills like Purge, for example. Purge is way too powerful currently. Fengrush has basically made a video on Purge and kind of talked a lot about kind of the issues with it. And yeah, I'm not going to go into it too much, but I think certain skills need it, but not, all AoEs. So I can't see this being too successful in all honesty, but the proof will be in the pudding. And then on September 28th to October 5th, there'll be an individual AoE cooldown, 3-second timer, and global ramping AoE cost. That's complicated, isn't it? Basically, each AoE ability will have an individual cooldown from test 2. So the idea is that if we use jabs, we have to wait 3 seconds. So we cast jabs, we wait 3 seconds, and we can't use the jabs again for 3 more seconds. But it also has the cost increase from test 3, which is obviously down here. So the idea is that if we cast jabs, we can't use it again, but we might use Ritual of Retribution. Because we use an AoE before that, Ritual of Retribution will have a cost increase now because of it. So that's what this is basically saying here. I like the principle of this, but I don't think this will really be that successful and be quite confusing for players. So I feel this is a bit too complicated to try and just really explain to players how it works and for them to kind of build around it. So I can't see this being too great. As for the new ones, which I think are really, really good, and this is why I said at the start of the video, ZOS are listening. And I don't say that lightly, because ZOS has in the past have been guilty for kind of not really responding to feedback. And I do feel that actually they are starting to, and this is really positive. October 5th to 12th, group size is limited to 12 in Cyrodiil, and any ally targeted abilities are only applied to group members. That is huge. This has been suggested by so many content creators, Feng Rush, myself, Is There No One Else, Ness ESO, loads of people mentioned, like, look at the group sizes, because surely that's got to be a big factor. And also look at, basically, make heals only impact people in your group. And this is really, really important. I think this is by far the most successful way of reducing the lag without changing combat. They might need to add in some of these other things which we'll talk about in a moment, but I think this is a really promising sort of way forward. The only issue is that if you are in a group v group situation, so you're in a group of 4 fighting a group of 12, and then there's also another group of 5 nearby on your team. There's effectively 9 people in your team, but you can't heal each other, even though you have less players than the other bigger group because they're grouped together. So there might be some situations where it's a bit awkward, but I think this is definitely the right move, especially limiting groups to 12. 12 is a trial group, that's a large group. This game tells you instantly, when you get to 4 people, going to 5 is a large group and you can't do certain content. So this makes so much sense. October 12th to 19th, group size is limited to 12 in Cyrodiil, and if a group contains 6 or more players, everyone's AoE abilities will go on individual cooldowns and have escalating costs similar to the test above. This, for me, as a small scale player, I'm in groups of, by myself, sometimes solo, or up to 4, maybe 5 at the very most. This is the most promising one for me. I don't feel they address, the issue at hand. I think these are a step in the right direction, but this is really good. This last bit does sound complicated, but it's actually this test here. What they've basically said is, look, individual AoE cooldown and your skills obviously cost more. So if you're in a group of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 people, 12, everybody will have a 3-second AoE delay. So if you cast, Purge, you can't recast Purge again for another 3 seconds. If you cast Radiating Regen, you can't recast it again. So this basically means that you can't spam Purge. So if you cast Purge, you wait 3 seconds to cast it again. If you cast Radiating Regen, you wait 3 seconds to cast it again, and so on and so on. And on top of that, if you use AoE skill to AoE skill to AoE skill, you'll get a debuff that means each subsequent AoE will cost more and more and more. So those ball groups that basically sit 12 people, 10, 15, 20 people packed together, and they literally spam Pulsar, Impulse, they spam Proxy Det, they use, just ults, and they literally just run at you with AoE abilities, they will have really big cost increases, which is really good. And those smaller groups, those groups that have a chance to try and bust them, will have some chances now, because actually, if you're in such a large group, there is a penalty for it, because there's just so many of you in one area. So I think this is a really good idea, and I really like the sound of this one, because it kind of really disincentivizes big groups that you kind of play in big groups to learn how to kind of just stay alive, and then you kind of go less and less and less until you get competent in PvP and go small scale. Some people will disagree with that and go PvP is all about the large fights and do battlegrounds for smaller fights and stuff. But I honestly feel that actually this is one of the better options, in all honesty. These last two, out of all of them, are the best. So what do I think of all this, and what does it actually mean? Well, first and foremost, the rewards are not great, in all honesty. Double AP to play a class week 1 and week 2 where you can't use your skills, Templar for example, not great. If you play Stamplar or Magplar, you're going to basically be, you're going to be pushed out of PvP. How could you compete with a Nightblade that has no skill delays, no skill increases, no penalties, when you have all of those kind of limitations, and Nightblades are very powerful as it is anyway? You're going to really struggle. You can't heal yourself in the same way. You can't bounce back. That's true for all Magicka characters in those first 2 weeks. They really kind of are reliant on burst heals to kind of bounce back. They don't have the same defensive mechanics as stamina with roll, dodge and block. And they can't really afford to use them in the same freedom. Most stamina builds can afford to roll 3 or 4 times quite easily and still bounce back. If a Magicka build rolls twice, 3 times, they are dead. It's just going to happen. So they are they're normally sort of pushed to go and really use heals regularly and stuff. So I think by having this, just a global ramp in AoE cost, it's going to affect Magicka again massively. And if you're a Magicka build in this week, or any of these first 3 weeks, you're really punished. You can't use your heals properly, you can't use your utilities properly. Your skills are going to either not work for 3 seconds, or they're going to cost loads and loads and loads. So you can't bounce back quickly from execute range. Test 4 has the same issue again. It's that you can't cast your heals regularly, so you instant issue there. You've got AoE cost increases, which again are on your heals. So I see these first 4 tests, in all honesty, really punishing Magicka builds. Anybody who's Magicka will know that if you can't heal yourself, you're dead. Execution is hitting for 5 to 7k a hit at least. Your heals are like 4 to 6. You have to spam 3 or 4 to try and get away and bounce back. If they cost too much, you can't use them. If they have delays, you can't use them. You're just going to be free AP to stamina. And when it's double AP, what are you going to see in Cyrodiil? Stamina builds. Stamina builds use Dizzy and Swing, Executioner, single target skills. So they're going to have like no penalties. So it's literally going to be free game and just free AP for stamina all day long in those sort of first 4 weeks. As for week 5 and 6, this is probably the most logical one. That I honestly think they should just scrap tests 1, 2, 3, and 4 and just go with test 5 and 6. These actually they won't punish smaller people or solo players. They're only going to punish those really big groups that cause lag, which is what they kind of need to target. I would also suggest, just the 4 other things they could do is put buffs on cooldowns. Things like Ice Fortress, how often do you need to really cast it? It's an armor buff. Volatile armor, because it's got an AoE damage to it, that needs to be spammed sometimes to pull Night Blizzard stealth. So they need to go through on like a skill by skill basis and basically adjust them, so that way it's either got something to overcome the kind of, you can't spam it. So like volatile armor could shoot spikes every 3 seconds, so you don't have to just recast it. It's cast it once, you got 20 seconds before you can reuse it. The buff's always on, but it could be anybody near you takes burning damage. So it works in the same kind of way, but you don't have to spam it. Plus, it doesn't have to do those calculations in the same kind of effect. I'd also look at proc sets, I've said it in the past, and just look at their conditions and say, look, if I use Troll King, rather than it scan for any ally, it only looks for my group. That would really limit the calculations it needs to do. And on top of all of that, I honestly think that the biggest issue with these tests are the rewards. If you're a Magicka character, as I've said multiple times now, why would you play PvP? There's no incentive. And if people that join in the tests, we're going to be left with this. They've already said that if the tests confirm their hypothesis, then AoE ability chaining is not going to happen. You can't spam them, you can't use them, and when it affects your heals, your shields, your damage abilities, particularly in Magicka classes, you are really, really out of luck. So I'm going to go on the live servers during these events. I will record and stream on Twitch, so you can see it yourself if you're on console. I will showcase Warden, Templar, all the different classes, just how badly are they impacted, and we can kind of adjust it there, see it for ourselves. And I really urge all of you, if you have a PC, play PvP. Even if you're a PvE player, just play PvP just to strain the server and really give them some information, because if these tests prove that there's less lag, whether it's players aren't playing it anymore or people are adjusting builds to not use the AoE skills, then they are probably going to go ahead with that change. So if everybody switches to stamina builds and they don't use AoE abilities, that will say that this test worked really, really well. They're going to go with this test. So you really need to go into Cyrodiil with your normal build, whether it's AoE skills or not, and just use it. And it's going to be painful. It's going to be frustrating. But you're going to really have to give them the information they need, because they're not going to change it otherwise. Or if they do change it, it'll be changed in a really bad way that we don't want. And, to the developers, ZOS, if you are watching, as I've said, adjust their rewards. There is no incentive to play as a Magicka character, or a Templar especially, during these changes. The first 4 weeks, Cyrodiil is written off for you. I would instead suggest they do something like, when you PvP, you get event tokens after every 1,000 AP. Or 100,000 AP, or 500,000 AP, and they can unlock pets or something. Just something cosmetic. PvE players love that stuff. PvP players generally aren't interested. Have costumes, have motifs maybe available, like the rewards of the worthy boxes could be kind of change to the mid-year mayhem boxes where you get motifs and stuff. Those things will help people get into Cyrodiil and test what you need them to test. That's what I'll do to encourage people to play. And I really will urge everybody, as I said, go on there, try it yourself, check out us on YouTube, check out Twitch and stuff. We'll obviously show you what it looks like. But I just want to really voice my concerns, my opinions. I hope that was kind of concise enough and succinct, and I'd really love to know what you think. So leave a comment, let me know, and more importantly, have your voice heard on the forums if you're on console. Your voice does matter. But with that said, guys, I'm going to wrap this one up here. So thanks for watching, take care, and bye.